All right, welcome back, Business Freedom Podcast listeners. I'm super psyched. I met our guest today at an event where I kind of spoke on, how a lot of team leaders, don't set their businesses up the right way. They're not putting their life first. And Brannon Potts out of Dallas, Fort Worth came up after me. We probably spoke for 20 minutes. It felt like just chatting with a brother. We're both men of faith, so we're literally brothers in Christ, and
Yes.
and just got to chatting, and he has a really cool business, a really cool story. And Brandon, before I let you share like the 60-second intro, the hook for why someone's going to spend 20 to 30 minutes listening to us chat, are you prepared to share the good, bad, ugly of your real estate business growth journey?
I am prepared to be real.
Awesome. I love it. I think it's something that a lot of folks aren't in our industry. All right. So give like 60 seconds on like a real quick snapshot of your journey, what the team looks like this year in terms of production, and why someone's going to want to listen.
Sure. We started in this business. I say we, it's my wife and I. We started back in 2011 when people thought we were crazy to get into this business. But with that why of providing an experience that we didn't have, we had a bad experience with an agent. We thought we could improve on it. And as we went through the process, there was a point, I felt like we were hitting our head against the wall. I got into it thinking I knew how to do things and not listening. And that was a mistake of being humble, saying there is good people out there giving great advice. And as we began to do that, we had to take some, and this is where it's getting to the ground truth. We had to get honest that we made some mistakes and that we had to make some adjustments. And then we did it, fortunately, more early on. And from that point, we launched from there. And really, I think the great truths are people that are real honest of telling you the good, bad, and the ugly, because that's real. No one went through this perfectly. And that's what I'm looking forward to sharing. The journey, and saying I'm still learning today.
Yeah. So what will this year look like in terms of units for your team?
Last year we finished up at roughly 250 units. I think we're going to be between 250 and 300. And being real, we had an issue on the front end sales side that hurt us, and it took 90 days to figure it out. And so we got a little behind, but we're catching back up. So the goal of 300. It's going to be tough, but we're going in the right direction. We will grow. It just won't be as strong. Catching those mistakes early help.
Yeah, no explanation needed. That's phenomenal. So let's start with. We've had a lot of chance to talk, so I have like a lot of things I want to go into. I want to go back to, 85% of our industry doesn't even have an assistant. So there are folks that are listening to that really don't really understand the concept of leverage, whether it's systems or people. But go back to the point where, 2011, 12, 13, I don't know when you decided to start a team and bring additional people into the fold, but go back to that time where you were working with buyers, working with sellers, you were the marketing person, you were putting up yard signs, you were where it's a complete crap show.
Yeah.
Talk about that. Everyone has that part of their journey. Talk about that a little while, and then how you kind of persevered through that.
It was 2011, and I didn't have really great mentors. And I had a good business background, but I didn't have the best mentors. And there was a point in 2011 that we did, have a lot of closings. It's closer to the end of the year because we got it in early 2011. So in that point where I was doing paperwork, I was doing the sales, I was doing all of it, and I knew I was not good at all of it. And realizing the best advice I got, I think that was in 2011. I'll say I got some good advice, is if you want to make, back then, you want to make $100,000, you need to roughly be doing $50 an hour work. And I knew that parts of the business that I was handling, parts were $50 to $100 an hour work, parts were $10 an hour work. But at that moment, I had to grow the revenue to be able to afford and hire that person, because I took that very seriously. I knew I was committing to that family. So I did have the benefit of my wife helping me, and she was much stronger in the paperwork side than I was. She's also honestly stronger at both sides. I would be being real honest. She can connect in different ways than I can. My strengths are a little bit different, but she was good at both of those. So about a year in, we were looking to hire, and we made the normal mistake of hiring an agent first. I see that talking even this morning. We were talking, my brother and I, he has a team also. Most teams, I would say even 80% of the teams aren't even organized right. And I didn't, I made that first mistake, and I learned from it. And I put the compensation wrong with that buyer's agent, and I had to do a take back, and that take back never works when you do that take back. It's just, I was doing it to be kind. I thought I was doing right. And really I was doing wrong because it was unsustainable, and realized that we were losing money. We did an 80-20 split that, I was losing money on every transaction. And I knew, unfortunately, I swallowed when I realized this. Oh, I know where this conversation is going, and this is not good. Mm. And so we did that. And of course that person left. And unfortunately it was a wrong hire. We start leverage with staff. And I think 2 reasons. The good salespeople are not good at paperwork. They're also not good at documenting best practices. Usually your good hires, they're going to help you document best practices. Eventually they're going to be something like a director of operations, but also it protects your revenue, and it allows you to have that extra revenue to pour back into your business and to grow it further than hiring. Even if you hire an agent first, you're giving, I don't want this to sound wrong, but you're giving away too much of the revenue too early, that you don't have enough to reinvest back. But still, the first 2 hires are the staff to allow you to do your most profitable work, which is out there selling.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then commit to those. So I want to make sure everyone got the first point. And I think this is how we first connected after that conference is the ROI of your time. Right? If you don't draw a line in the sand, it's funny. Mine was $250 an hour. So maybe I overshot. I was in the business for like a month, and I was like, this is so hard. There's like 90% of what we do is at least $50 an hour or less, like you said. And all my buyer's agents were willing to make $30 to $40 an hour, working 2,500 hours a year, making 75 to 100 grand. So the math was super easy. And it allowed me to get out of, everything but listings within like 3.5 years. So, but it was the same exact thing, the ROI of your time. Was there a point so how many units did you do real quick? 2011, 12, and 13. How many units did it look like?
If I can remember the exact number. So 2011, I did 22 units. 2012, my wife helped. We had a baby during that time. So she'd gotten her license, but we had a little one. 2012, we did 46 units. I then became a team leader for a period of time, and my wife was running the team for 12 and 13 and part of 14. So part of 12, 13 and part of 14. But we were growing, but that wasn't my wife's natural strength to lead the team. And it came to a point. So then 13, I want to say, if I remember right, it was around 75. 14, we broke the 100 unit barrier. And then we've gone from there to last year, I guess you'd say 244 units. But there was a point, and this being real, my wife was helping lead the team. I was leading a brokerage. My strengths were leading this team. Hers were leading parts. I would call her, she was a great, and take this as a compliment, she was a great lieutenant, and she helped protect the culture. She is the culture of our team. She embodies that. But she was mama too, and the kids were suffering. And I remember coming home one day, and she says, buddy. And when she says buddy, I'm in trouble. But she was also at a breaking point. She said, either you quit or I'm gonna, so you pick.
Yeah.
And I knew that my passion was to go back to leading the team. So I went back to leading the team, letting her step out of some of her roles so that she could do the right responsibilities that she wanted in her passions, her whys of pouring into our children. That was the right decision. She's still involved in the organization. So I came back in 2014 and took over the role of leading the team and being the listing agent. By that time, we had buyer's agents. And then, and like you said, I think if you progress in what your role is. My role now is different than it was 2 years ago. And looking at, okay, now what do I need to do to be the $250 to say $500 an hour work? What does that look like being the CEO? I realized recently, and my CPA was the one saying it, you're doing too much accounting. I come from a CFO background. I love it, but he's right. I've got to give those roles away. I think it's a progression.
Yeah.
You know, yes, I had a vision because I started out as Potts Realty Group. So I started with that name. Fortunately, I didn't have to rebrand, thank goodness. But I had to progress. It's a thought progression.
Yeah.
In your role, I read through the MREA book. And I think that's the first time I read it. It was before I was an agent. But then when I really read it, I guess is what I would say, when I really read it and studied it, was back in 2013. And now I've read it 7 times. And every time I read it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that was in there. Because I see it differently because I'm in a different spot.
Yeah.
And so we learn it progressively.
Yeah. So the next point I want to bring out, if we're going through teaching points, Brannon just covered every 90 days, and I've done this for 4, 5, well, probably more than that in my calendar for the last 5, 6 years. But in my early days too, it's a series of delegations and elevations. So you're constantly looking at where you're spending your time. Not like you're doing a time study every week where every 15 minutes, that's like, I can't say that I've ever done that, but big picture, I look back, I'm like, last week, what did I do? Where did I spend my time? And ultimately, I mean, in order to do this long term, you need to get to the things that you love to do. You need to, not give your whole life to your work, like a lot of real estate team leaders do, and then they suffer in other areas of their life. So if I were to have 2 takeaways: ROI of your time so far, and then delegate and elevate. Every 90 days, just look at the things you've touched and what can you get off your plate that's less than even $25 an hour. Bookkeeping, you can probably get for $25 an hour.
Yes.
And even if you like doing it, there's only so good you can get at it. It's not a game-changing activity, right?
Right.
So that's really, really good. So let me shift gears a little bit. So you mentioned when you came back in 2014, you came back as the team leader and the listing agent, which for a 100-unit team is pretty typical. What was that next phase of growth, where you were surrounding yourself with agents that were getting more productive? You probably had some agents maybe that complained to mom all the time and they weren't actually doing the thing they were supposed to do. And so you had to come in and maybe get the culture of productivity back in order. What is the next phase? Like there's 3 phases of growth. One is getting to 100. The next is 100 to 200, where you're still in production, and now where you are now. So let's get to that middle phase of growth. What were the challenges with culture of productivity? Let's all do the work. You're focusing on listings. How was it in there? Your time, your stress?
You said it. I think we progressed relatively fast. I wanted to progress with leverage, which made me have to choose to lower my profit for a period of time of delegation to get quality of life. I've learned in life, as many good team leaders, there's a balance. There's quality of life and then there's money. And both truly have similar value. You need both, but there's some equalness of those values. So we began to choose to make that transition of me getting out of listings early. But it was a good decision so that I could get to the 30,000-foot view. I realized even handling listings, I could have done it longer. And yes, I could have had income a little bit higher for a longer period of time, but I was willing to give some of that away, if you want to say, or let somebody else earn some of that money for them to allow me to get some quality of life back in that early stage. But it let me have time to start mastering hiring. And I think talent acquisition is leverage. Mastering talent acquisition is a leverage process. And we have, over the last several years, gotten increasingly higher level talent to executive level talents that we've hired on our team, which allows me to do even less because they have the skills to lead others. And now it's allowing them to build teams inside of the team and let them master hiring too. That's down the road, but allow them to build a team inside of the team where they have leverage too. So we're heading in that progression too of doing that. So I don't know how that directly answers it well, but
it definitely does. So share. I'm only hoping you have horror stories because I have so many of them. Share like a common pitfall with bringing people onto your team.
I think even to this day, I get upset with myself of compromising process sometimes, because I'm one of those, I believe everybody wants it the same way I do, and they don't. And so I tend to compromise the process and realize people can snow me in an interview. And I've gotten a little bit of checks and balances on that with my wife and with a few others that are really good and intuitive of reading people. So I'm realizing even my weaknesses on that I've hired, as anybody growing, you go through a lot of people, and we've been through periods of lots of people. We've done well recently. My wife is a good check and balance on me. And she was giving me a hard time about somebody we hired that made the cut, and they didn't make it within the first 2 weeks. I've gotten better at letting go quicker. But we've gotten 5 out of 6 in a row really good. And I was proud of that because as all of us that have hired a lot, that's a good run of hires. I would love to go 5 out of 6 every time, but that's not realistic.
Yeah.
So there's been many bodies left of hires that just weren't fits culturally or production wise.
Yeah. So I was sitting in church, and I probably wasn't all that connected to God because the message hit me as a business coaching lesson. And if you don't have a faith, I want you to go to YouTube, and if you're listening to this, and type in Stephen Furtick, Furtick, relationship advice. So I was sitting in that sermon where he was talking about patterns versus potential. And I wasn't in a 5 out of 6 streak. I probably was in a 1 out of 6 streak where I'm like, man, there's got to be, it's painful. So the one lesson Brannon taught us is that you've got to figure it out. You're going to fail. Hopefully you can get your process dialed in. You're going to be the wrong person most of the time. You need a process that's handled by others on your team, or a part of it, the major part of it. But then we're always our types. We're visionaries. We see potential in people when they have no pattern of success. And so it's a really funny video. It's only like a minute and 15 seconds, but it talks to that exactly. It's like we can be sitting in front of somebody and we're like, of course, you're telling me you're going to do the work. You're telling me you're going to get up early. You're telling me you're going to prospect for 3 hours a day. You want to make 6 figures. You've only ever made $30,000 for the last 12 years in but now all of a sudden you're going to flip the switch and you're going to be successful. Very rarely. And it's not a diss on humanity, like people can't change, but generally speaking, you need to grab onto 3 to 5 patterns that you are attracted to that your business needs. So I think that's super powerful. 2 things Brannon just taught us. the fact that you're going to fail in this area, don't be afraid of it. So just get in there, identify a process, have a defense process, have your wife, who's a different personality than you, involved in the interview process, or your administrator, just handle part of the process, and then look for patterns, not potential. And you will get this down. You will get better at it. You will be able to call BS on people when they're sitting in front of you and they're saying, yeah, I'm a hard worker. It's like, okay, so let's dig into that. Our first core value is that we hustle and work hard. Let's talk about it. Tell me how you did that in college. Tell me how you did that in your first job. Tell me how you do that, so that's really, really good. So let me shift gears a little bit. When you look back on your business journey, you came from corporate. I think that's a similar part of our story too. I came from a corporate environment. But where did you get your inspiration or advice when it came to running your own business? Is there a person or a book, or is there one thing you could put your finger on that somebody that's early on in their journey maybe can relate to?
Man, that's a deep question, broad question. I think some of the life experiences from the past, when I was in my college years, it was was introduced to John Maxwell and went to several conferences there in Atlanta, because that's where he lives now. But I got to meet him, and I've always been a reader, and I've loved reading business books, and read that Developing the Leader Within was one of the earliest books that I read when I was in my young 20s, and then some other business books. But and then I also share with people, and I'm just going to be real who I am, and I share it with our team. The best business book I've ever read is the Bible, and reading through Proverbs and reading through just different things in the Bible of how to treat people. And I'm not saying I've been perfect. I'm so type A that it's extreme sometimes. I've learned how to, sand off those edges and really begin to care about others. And I got this from John Maxwell. He says, if you help people get what they want, they'll help you get what you want. And I didn't fully understand that. And I don't think I have fully say I understand it, but the more I practice that, the more I understand the depths of that term. And it's empowered me, and I love building into people's lives, and just pouring into them to grow their business acumen and help them get what they want. It's been life-changing to me.
Yeah. So this is never an easy thing for me to admit, and I want you to comment on it, because it's one of the things that really impressed me when we first talked when we had our talk in Charleston. I spent a good chunk, so 12 years in, I probably spent the first 8 years of building my team with a team that was 100% there to serve me. So that is like not a proud statement. It makes me a little just uncomfortable to say it. And now I just see, I'm 45. I see this golden opportunity for the next 20 years. Now I can make it right. And I've been serving and really digging into the lives of the people that are on my two teams. Talk about that a little bit, like the heart of service and how it's almost like things get easier when you're just like, in every moment, you're just trying to help the person in front of you.
And I'm there with you. I battle with that. I struggle with that too. I think it's my struggle too, but I want to master this more and more every day. But I care about our team, and I tell everybody, this is my family. And as I pour into their personal development, I've gotten greater joy in doing that. Yes, I enjoy making good money, but the depths of joy of pouring into people and watching them flourish and watching them grow, I am enjoying that more and more every year. And it's allowed me to also, I do some coaching for my kids in volleyball and learning how to lead and inspire people. I call it, I want to speak life into them and pull out the potential. And I'm doing that both in sports with my kids, my girls, and I'm doing that here at the team. And I've enjoyed what it's teaching me, because I think we tend to lead in what we're hungry for. And I enjoy that. I enjoy when I get in compliments and people speaking life into me and believing in my potential. And so I've applied that with our team, and I've watched people flourish, because don't we all perform better when somebody believes the potential in us? And so I'm doing that with this team, and they're teaching me things too. But this has become my family as much as my personal family, and I care about seeing them reach their potential and figuring that out with them and dreaming with them what could be, and learning how to pull that out of them. And so it's taught me a lot. And I'm not saying I've done this perfectly, and I still don't do it perfectly, but learning how to serve them. Great leaders truly are servants, as Jesus was. He poured his life out for people, and learning how to serve our people here in our organization. So now I don't work with clients anymore. So my world is this team, and being able to pour into them. And I tell everybody here, and I'm just being who I am. So this is who I am, that I feel like I'm in full-time ministry, and I love it. I am pouring into this team and trying to be the best leader by serving them and giving them leadership and vision and where we can go. It is pouring into them and the opportunities. I've got to think bigger, because we've got big vision people in the team now that are challenging me to think bigger. And so I have to continue growing. And sometimes I have to, and I have in recent times had to get up and say, man, I made a mistake, and I am sorry, team. I made a mistake, and I was ugly to you, Yeah. And I was being selfish. We all fight selfishness.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that, because I think a lot of times when people are making this move to surrounding themselves with people and taking into account other people's lives, they feel like they need, and this has been a lesson for me, and I feel like I can almost teach it now. They feel like they have to have everything figured out. They would have had to have managed people before. A lot of times it's just like, we're just good people trying to do great things together, and just have honest conversations. Like when you feel like with your spouse, when you feel like you've messed up, the quicker you can just connect and apologize, and just the better it is. But sometimes it's in business, we don't apply that as well. Sometimes we overthink it, like, I'm the boss, I'm taking the risk on the expenses, I don't really need to apologize. Is there any comment you can make about how the journey could be easier if we can just be more authentic and real with our people?
I think, and we look back, I'm reading a book right now called, I think it's called Titan. It's a big volume on a biography of John D. Rockefeller. It was a different time. I think even just 30 years ago was a different time. Mm-hmm. But we want realness and genuineness of our leaders, and the good, bad, and the ugly. But I think as I've learned how to be real, I shared this the other day, if you win their hearts, you win their minds and actions. They want to work for somebody that's real, or I don't say work with someone that's real, and it's more of a work with. That's what I think is the culture today. They want to work with their leaders, not for their leaders. And it's winning their hearts by being real with them and caring about them wins their hearts. Then the actions naturally start to take care of themselves, because they're inspired to work with their leader. They catch that vision, and they hold on to that vision, because they're inspired not by a whip or cracking the whip or being disciplinarian. It's by encouraging them and leading them, and you win their hearts first, then you win their minds and actions.
Yeah, awesome. What, as we wrap up here, there's someone, whether they're a top producing agent or a team leader, I've talked to guys that you'd never know that they weren't profitable, that things at home are not on point, physically or spiritually, they're suffering. And I'm talking teams that are doing 2 to 3 million of GCI that are not profitable, and nobody's ever talking about profit. and everyone's just talking about, yeah, you know, I did 2.4 million last year. That's amazing. How'd you do that? Well, I run a crappy business. I don't hold my people accountable. I overspend on marketing and I have no profit. And like, that's how I did it. Nobody's saying that part.
Yes.
So what advice would you have for, you know, maybe someone in that position where, you know, it's just a tough time for them? What words of encouragement would you give for to somebody?
You know, I think there are other teams that are just, you're describing teams that have this issue. It's really getting honest and real, and you're going to have to make some adjustments, but the adjustments are less painful now than they could be later. And because if you keep going down that model, it is unsustainable, and the pain would be much harder than making the adjustments now while the revenue's still there. It's you know, it's not an easy discussion, but go through that easier, milder, I guess I'd say milder pain now versus a harder pain of bankruptcy.
Mm.
And it also takes away the stress, because stress has physical effects on you that are taking away life from you, of not running a healthy business. The lack of sleep, what does that do in your life? It's quality of life. It's affecting your body running an unhealthy business. That's just real for all of us. We still deal with it just because we got lots going on, but it's not the same when you're profitable. You can capture opportunities differently when you're profitable.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's been a pleasure. You know, to me, there was 4 or 5 big lessons. Hopefully, we talked about, let's see if we can unpack them real quick. We talked about return, so ROI of your time. Brannon's number was 50 out of the gate. Mine was 250. So like really looking at everything you do. Then we talked about delegations and elevations, right? Get stuff off your plate based on that number. Then we talked about leveraging people and failing fast, patterns versus potential. And then we just talked about, what was the last thing we just talked about?
Running a sustainable business model, we talked at the end.
Yeah, really serving versus being served.
Yes, serving others.
Yeah, serving others. And then business becomes easy because there's only, and you and I model Jesus, but anybody can model, like, you just know in a situation where you're either serving, you know, the frustration melts away. You're not angry at your agents all the time. You're trying to understand how they're struggling. Assuming it's a right hire, you're trying to understand how they're struggling. If it's a bad hire,
it's
religion,
a bad hire.
faith, none of it's going to help you. That person just needs to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
In Jesus' name. So I have no problem saying that, because there are just a lot of people. I think the industry, comment on this, and this will be our last thought, and then we'll wrap up. The industry, I think, and I've never hired outside of, well, I have for my coaching company. It's been really way easier. Why do you think it's hard to find good salespeople in the real estate industry?
Man, I've not really thought about that necessarily. I will say that I've not hired people that have been agents. We've not had good luck with that. The 2 times I did that, usually I'm hiring people with bad habits. And so what we like to do is, we've actually have 4 past clients on our team that are now team members. And I look for patterns of success. And it's able to hire people and create the habits at the beginning versus trying to change somebody's habits. We've not had good luck with that, just being honest. Mm-hmm. But I think it's not just our industry, it's all industries have a hard time finding good salespeople. I think it's a common in just our lives in general, in business, is trying to find top talent salespeople and looking for the right ingredients. So we just have chosen not to go down the path of past agents and just train them for the right habits at the beginning. And that's been the most successful model we've had.
Yeah, and I think you touched on it. My hypothesis is that real estate tends to attract people that think it's easy.
Too much Discovery Channel or HGTV.
Like you
People
look
that
at
think it
three
just comes
homes.
to
Yeah, somebody's going to buy one of the three. You make 10 grand. If I could do that 12 times a year, nobody realizes that the average agent sells 7 homes and then they're giving 20 grand to their broker. They're making 30 grand net if they're lucky. And
yes.
that's like the average or greater. So this has been awesome. If you're at a point in your journey where things are just hard, reach out. We've got free sources on the site. Brannon, I appreciate your time. You're running
No
an
problem.
awesome business. It doesn't mean it's perfect. Here's my last parting advice, and maybe you can give one comment on this. Nobody's business is perfect. Anyone that is only talking about
Absolutely.
top line and they're not sharing the good, bad, the ugly, just ask them that question. So tell me the good, bad, ugly about your business. Like if you really want to get real with somebody, ask them about people issues, ask them about profitability, ask them about their marketing spend as a percentage of GCI. If it's more than 10%, you probably, they may be running a business that's not profitable. Talk about gross margin. I know guys that are running a team that are at 10% gross margin,
Wow.
meaning they pay their agents 90%. It's not a team, it's a brokerage, and they're not making money. They may be making money in mortgage or title, but they're not making money selling homes. Any comments on just being real in this industry?
I think that's one of the things I've discovered or learned over the time is to take everybody's thoughts as a grain of salt, vet them, making sure that no one team has it perfect. Everybody has challenges, there's struggles. The great teams have failed the most, and ask them what their failures are. I think we can learn from people's failures as much, if not more, than their successes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Appreciate it, brother. We'll talk soon for sure. And come back and listen again. We'll talk to you guys later.